In this week's parsha, we have the pasuk va'asu li migdash v'shachanti b'soicham, and this is the pasuk from which the Rambam in Hilchos Beis Abchira learns out, and he says that we need to make a house for Hashem, prepared to bring karbonos in it, as the pasuk says va'asu li migdash. The Rambam goes on to say that the Torah already explicitly tells us the Mishkan that Moshe Rabbeinu made, but that was only temporarily, as the pasuk says, up until now you didn't come to a permanent place. In Hilchos Malachim, the Rambam speaks about the same mitzvah, but there he learns it out from a different pasuk. The Rambam speaks about 3 mitzvahs that the Yidden have when they come into Eretz Yisrael: to appoint a king, to get rid of Amalek, and to build a Beis HaMikdash. There the Rambam brings a pasuk, l'shichnoi sidrishu uvasa shama. You'll seek the place where Hashem dwells, and that's where you will come. Famous question, why does the Rambam bring a different pasuk over here? Why doesn't he bring the same pasuk as in the beginning of Hilchos Beis Abchira? The pasuk of Asuli Migdash Shachanti B'Soicham. The Lechem Mishnah explains that the pasuk of Asuli Migdash is referring to the Mishkan that was made in the Midbar, whereas the pasuk of L'Shichnei Sidrishu is referring to the Mishkan of Shiloi, a structure of stone that was made in Eretz Yisrael, as we'll see later. And from there we also learn out about the Beis HaMikdash. However, the question is, since the Rambam is counting the building of a house to Hashem in Hilchos Beis Abchira as a mitzvah for all future generations, why does he bring a pasuk of Asuli Migdash, which seemingly is referring to the building of the Mishkan? The Rebbe says what's even more not understood is that when we look at the source of the Rambam for Hilchos Malachim, which comes from a Medrash, speaking about these 3 mitzvahs that the Yidden have when they come into Eretz Yisrael, the Medrash, when it speaks about the mitzvah of building the Beis HaMikdash, brings the pasuk of Asuli Migdash v'shachanti b'soicham. Why is the Rambam bringing another pasuk? The Rebbe says we also need to understand, seemingly there's totally a different pasuk that the Rambam should have brought, which in the Gemara and Sifri say this is speaking about the Beis HaMikdash. This is a pasuk that says, the place where Hashem will choose to rest His name over there. This is referring to the Beis HaMikdash. Why does the Rambam not bring this pasuk for the building of the Beis HaMikdash? The Rebbe says, another thing we need to understand is that in the beginning of Hilchos Beis Abchira, after the Rambam tells us about the building of the Beis HaMikdash and that Moshe Rabbeinu built a Mishkan temporarily, the Rambam then goes on and says that once the Yidden came into Eretz Yisrael, they set up a Mishkan for 14 years in a place called Gilgal while they were conquering and dividing Eretz Yisrael. Then they came to Shiloh and they built a structure out of stone. And that one stood for 369 years. Then Eli passed away, that was destroyed. They came to Noiv, they built a Mikdash over there. Shmuel passed away, that was destroyed. They came to Givoin, they built a Mikdash over there. Finally, they came to the Beis Olamim, to the eternal place in Yerushalayim. And the Rambam concludes by saying that together Noiv and Givoin stood for 57 years. And we need to understand, the Rambam is a sefer of halacha. Why is all of this relevant, all of these details? The Rambam is seemingly over here just telling us some history. Now, it's true that the Rambam is quoting a Mishnah, but first of all, the Mishnah sometimes will tell us things that are not halacha. The Rambam is a sefer of halacha. Furthermore, in the Mishnah, it actually comes a connection to certain halachas that were relevant during those times of those Mishkanos, which the Rambam doesn't even mention those facts. So seemingly what happened, what's past. Why is all of this relevant? And the question is even more that the Rambam actually starts going into all of the details and the amount of years that they were there. And these are even things that are not even brought in the Mishnah. Why is all of this relevant? In order to understand this, the Rebbe has a look at the beginning of Hilchos Malachim where he speaks about the 3 mitzvahs of appointing a king, destroying Amalek, and building the Beis HaMikdash. And the question is, why is this relevant when we are speaking about it in Hilchos Malachim? Why is it important to speak about the halachas of the Beis HaMikdash? Also, why does the Rambam need to say we were commanded for 3 mitzvahs? If we want, we could count that there are 3 mitzvahs. It seems to be that the Rambam is trying to tell us something over here. And the explanation is that these 3 mitzvahs are completely dependent on each other. That means, although yes, they are 3 separate mitzvahs, nevertheless, each one, in order for it to be proper and complete, you need to have the other ones as well. In order that the king should be complete, he needs to destroy Amalek and build the Beis HaMikdash. In order for the Beis HaMikdash to be complete, there needs to be first the king and there needs to be the destroying of Amalek. In other words, it's not only a matter of certain things that the Yidden were given a timeline of these three things that need to be done one after the other, but they're all very, very much dependent on each other. And this is what the Rambam means when he says that there are three mitzvahs. Because, in other words, he's telling us that they're all very much dependent on each other. And now we could start understanding what the Rambam tells us in the beginning of Hilchos Beis HaBchira. And he says that there's a mitzvah to build a house for Hashem. And that the Torah told us the Mishkan of Moshe Rabbeinu made. And that was temporary. In other words, that included in the building of the Beis HaMikdash for Hashem is immediately, right away, the Mishkan that Moshe Rabbeinu made. And since, as we said, the building of the Beis HaMikdash is dependent and connected to these other two mitzvahs of appointing a king and destroying Amalek, we must say that right from the first Mishkan that was made and in all of the following ones, we already also had these other things. Yes, it's true that these three mitzvahs as three distinct things will happen when they come into Eretz Yisrael, to appoint a king, to get rid of Amalek, and to build a Beis HaMikdash. But at every stage when a Mishkan is being made, it has to be that already, to a certain extent, there's already a king on a certain level, and getting rid of Amalek. And this is what the Rambam means when he says, the pasuk of Asuli Mikdash, that right from the beginning they're already building a Mikdash exactly the way it's going to be in the future, and that the Torah tells us about the Mishkan that Moshe Rabbeinu made, and that was temporary, meaning to say that Moshe Rabbeinu, as we know, also had a din of a melech. And the pasuk tells us that Yeshua, this is in Parshas B'Shalach, that he fought Amalek and he weakened Amalek, and only then did he Yidden have the mitzvah of Asuli Mikdash. In other words, right from the beginning, from the first Mishkan that they're making, they're already starting to fulfill the mitzvah of building a house for Hashem. So now we can understand what the Rambam is telling us. He starts telling us what happens when the Yidden go into Eretz Yisrael. This is all one long continuation. In other words, starting from Moshe Rabbeinu, since it happened as a melech, and after destroying Amalek, all of the future Mishkanos are already in that state of being after they have already a king, and they got rid of Amalek to a certain extent. And this is what the Rambam is telling us, that we have these other Mishkanos that to a certain extent are already fulfilling this mitzvah of Asuli Mikdash. Now, it's not in the most perfect way. Only after they are going to come in conquering Eretz Yisrael, after the 14 years of conquering and dividing. Now they're going to build something even more. The Mishkan and Shiloh, which is a structure out of stone, which is going to be even a more permanent place. And the Rambam goes on to say that once Eli passed away, they built in Neuven and Givon, and the Rambam specifically says they built a Mikdash over there. He's trying to tell us that they're starting from the Mishkan of Moshe. They build a Mishkan. Yes, it was temporary, but it's continuously being this idea of a Mikdash. First a Mishkan, and now even more permanent, of proper structure in Shiloh and in Neuven and Givon, which are a proper Mikdash. Of course, the ultimate of that is going to be once you have David HaMelech and Shlomo HaMelech, which are going to build a permanent Beis HaMikdash. So now, when the Rambam says in Hilchos Malachim, he comes along and he brings a different pasuk, L'shichnoi tidrishu v'asa shama. He doesn't bring the pasuk v'asuli Mikdash. He also doesn't bring a pasuk that speaks directly to the Beis HaMikdash, is because now in Hilchos Malachim, as we said, now he's speaking specifically about what happens once the Yidden come into Eretz Yisrael, after they conquer, after they divided Eretz Yisrael. Now it's a whole new level already of, it's no longer a tent, it's no longer a temporary place, and therefore it's a much more permanent place. They are already appointing a king. At least Yeshua being much more of a king. He's being appointed properly through a Beis Din and a Navi and so on and so forth. And therefore the pasuk that Rambam is bringing now is the pasuk that's referring to the fact that they have a permanent place now in Eretz Yisrael. So again, in summary, the pasuk of Asuli Mikdash was telling us the beginning of the process, which started already with Moshe Rabbeinu, and every Mishkan after that is a continuation and part of the general mitzvah of building a Beis HaMikdash. But in Hilchos Malachim, the Rambam is bringing another pasuk because he's emphasizing over here a certain permanence that comes once they are finally in Eretz Yisrael itself. The Rebbe says, well, this will also have a halachic idea, which is that we know that you're not allowed to copy the Beis HaMikdash. You're not allowed to copy parts of the Beis HaMikdash and the Beis HaMikdash itself. And the Rebbe says, based on what we're saying, that all of these Mishkanos are really part of that same mitzvah of Asuli Mikdash, the same thing would apply, that you wouldn't be allowed to copy also these other Mishkanos of Shiloh, of Noiv, and Givon, etc., etc. The Rebbe now moves on into Pnimi Yisrael Yanim about these three mitzvahs of appointing a king, of getting rid of Amalek, and building the Beis HaMikdash. And the Rebbe says, Al Pi Chassidus, these three ideas are that Melech, number one, is the idea of yira, of fear. The the king himself is filled with awe and fear of Hashem, and he passes that on to us. This is stage number one, step number one. But this is the lower level of fear. We connect this to the level called iskafia, where we're only subduing the bad. Then comes Mechias Amalek, when we're completely getting rid of the bad, which happens as a result of the avodah called Itzhapcha, when there's a complete transformation. And finally, building the Beis HaMikdash represents the concept of Yiro Elah, the higher level of fear. As we know regarding the Beis HaMikdash, it says it's Mikdashi Tiro. We have to have fear of the Beis HaMikdash. And in these days, this is replaced with the inyan of Dalad Amis Shel Halacha. And the Rebbe says this is why this is all so connected to Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu is the first Melech, as we said. And Moshe Rabbeinu is the first one that starts off with building the Mishkan, but this is going to lead all the way to the Beis HaMikdash. It's all part of the same mitzvah, because we know that Moshe Rabbeinu is the one that Chassidus explains gives das to the Bnei Yisrael, allows the Yidden to come to a level of fear. And first of all, the lower level of fear, but also the higher levels of fear. First, the fear like through a king, and second of all, the fear that comes as a result of the Beis HaMikdash. On the other hand, of course, the ultimate is going to be in the Beis HaMikdash, that's going to be in the most perfect way through Melech HaMashiach, which is going to strengthen all of the inyanim of Yiddishkeit, fight the wars, as we said, and give the Beis HaMikdash b'koimoi, which then will have the proper Melech b'shleimus, getting rid of Amalek completely, and will have the Gili of the Malchus of Hashem, Meheirav Yameinu b'karev mamash.